Good morning everyone, and welcome to the Entei Research preparation video. I will go quite in depth on how to prepare this week into next week. The Entei Research is a 2-week event, so we'll discuss a little bit about how to go about that as well. And the main thing that I think is important to do is to pop into the box here and rather click on the teams and start setting up what you're thinking to do during the Entei Research. For me currently, this is what I got. Unfortunately, I don't have a good Ninetales, and I also don't have a Typhlosion. This Quilava I found as a Quilava, and it's not particularly strong aside from the berry finding, so it's not going to cut it for me to evolve it into Typhlosion. But overall, Quilava is a pretty good Pokemon. If we bring it up in the widget, I can show that it is decently fast. It should be around 50 minutes, I believe. And so it kind of stands on its own. With the Entei combo, then having a Quilava and a Typhlosion can work out nicely. So I'm thinking to just keep this as a Quilava, and then I'll be looking for the Typhlosion hopefully this week or next week, and then add that to the team. I'm not thinking to run Flareon too much. It will all depend on just how many ingredients I get as a surplus during the week. We'll cover that a little bit too. So it is a pretty strong Flareon. It doesn't have berry finding. So for the most part, this is all about those skill triggers. One thing that I think is important to do in preparation for the Entei Research is to set up a team view like this. And one of the things that it can help you do is if you click on the stats button, let's see if I can move the cursor here. Yeah, so this button right here is quite useful. It gives you an overview of what your team is like. So obviously with all the fire types, we're going to get favored berry, and the Quilava is berry finding. And in terms of preparation, it is a few things you can do. You can build your team and look at what it looks like. In this case, you can see what kind of ingredients you are getting. And depending on your Pokemon and your team composition, there may be some patterns that will jump out at you. So for me personally, if I work on the Arcanine and bring it up to level 30, I'm going to unlock a second herb. And during the fire type week, every fire type Pokemon will get +1 to its ingredients drop. And so with the exception of the Bowtie or Bowtie milk and cacao, every single of these drops will have one more. So it's 3 on the fiery herb, 2, 3, 1, 5 on the ginger from the Charizard, 2 and 2. And so running a good chem ticket, probably a good idea. That will increase your pot size quite a bit. And based on these ingredient drops, I probably will want to run the Flareon quite a bit too, and get away with a lot of those supplemental ingredients. And so once you set up the team and you click on the stats here and you have a look at the ingredients, you get a clear idea for what you should look for in what kind of dish that you should be making. I think what we can do now is, so for me personally, that is going to be the herbs for sure and the ginger. So for the most part, I need to look for a recipe that is using the herbs and the ginger. And I think it's time for us to pop into RaenonX. There we go. I've had a lot of technical issues today for some reason. Okay, so what you are currently looking at is the RaenonX website. And this is a great resource, particularly for those of you who are particularly just like deep into the game and you want to learn a whole lot. But also for beginners, if you know how to navigate it, you can really learn a lot about the game. And RaenonX in general is among the reasons why we know about the skill trigger rates and the ingredient rates in such detail. So this is a really, really great resource. And in my opinion, it really helps out making the overall experience playing Pokemon Sleep a lot better. I am a huge fan of having a lot of data to base my decisions on, and that helps out a lot. If you would like to support their work, you can do the login method over here and just log into the website using your Discord user, which is pretty cool. And then they do have a Discord server of their own, and there is a tab for the shop. And you can just select one of those tiers. And I don't know if all of them will give you no ads, but at the very least, they have a couple tiers there. You can check those out. So what we are looking at here is their cooking calculator. And you can find that here in the menu under cooking and recipes/dishes. There are a couple options here that are pretty interesting. Let me see if I can scale this up so that it's easier to see for everyone. And it is this row on the top and the bottom. The bottom row is ingredients that you can select that will disappear, or rather hide some of these options. Because, for example, I don't have a corn farmer. So if you see up here, I click on the corn, it's going to remove some of these dishes. And then I don't have an egg farmer. And so it's going to reduce a lot more for me. I don't think I'll be getting a lot of milk. So that is something that I could be looking at too. Potentially what I could do this week would be to stack up on tomatoes and potatoes. That's probably a good idea. The problem that I am left with then is, as you saw in my game, I'm getting a lot of fiery herbs and I'm getting a lot of ginger, and Dream Eater Butter Curry does not require any of those. So that is unfortunate. I don't want to use my Slowpoke Tails, so I can hit that in there too. And for the most part, I also don't have a reliable bean sausage. And you can see by just adding some of these ingredients that you don't have a lot of, then you are limiting your options. And that can help you sort out what to do really. And so you can quickly see that for me personally, it seems like the Dream Eater or the Spicy Leek Curry is the better option. And the Spicy Leek Curry has ginger and it has the herbs, and the only ingredient that I'm left looking for then is the large leek. And I happen to have two really strong large leek Pokemon, and so I can probably stack up like 200-300, 4 or 5 this week, unless I then decide to work on the dish level, which was why I reset for the curries this week. I'll probably find a middle ground and be perfectly fine just running my Dugtrio a little bit during the Entei Research. The Entei Research is over 2 weeks, and so it may be the case that you will do a somewhat soft first week and then go all in the second week. I'm thinking that's possibly what I'm going to do. It just depends on how many mains I can collect to have a lot of Entei encounters and get a bunch of biscuits. And then hopefully I'll be able to find a decent Entei, either be happy with the first one, excuse me, or the second, maybe third one. And then I don't have to spend my master biscuits. I really want to hold on to those just because they have laid the blueprint for legendary events in general. And I think that's interesting. And so there's always an opportunity in the future to use the master biscuits. Okay, so back to the calculator here. That's one way to go about it. The other thing you can do is to simply go on the top row here and select any dishes that have any of these ingredients. So if you just do herbs, you see that we have 5 options. But then if you add the ginger, we should have more options. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So essentially it was because all the dishes that do have herbs also have ginger. Okay, so if you have the ginger and then you add the herbs, then you get a bunch of options. And for each ingredient that you add here, you're going to get more options. Okay, so for me personally, we can see that another dish that shows up is the Inferno Corn Keema. For a lot of you, this will be the dish to aim for. What you need then is a lot of herbs. That should be easy. During Fire Week, you need a lot of sausage. So if you have a double sausage Charizard, this is the dish to aim for. And then 14 corn is a decent bit, but let's say you have an ingredient magnet Pokemon and you can start saving up the corn this week from that Pokemon. Maybe you have a supplemental corn somehow. I haven't hunted the Beware yet. And potentially, if you find a Ninetales with corn in that second slot, that could be huge. So for example, if I somehow am able to find the Ninetales either this week or next week, I could potentially consider doing the Inferno Corn Kima in the second week of Entei Research, as I am getting a lot of ginger, and I probably have a decent... You know what? I'm super curious now. I should pop into the game and look for my Charmeleon. If I'm not mistaken, I should have one that I can... Okay, I'm not going to switch teams. Pretty sure I do have a decent Charmeleon that I could consider boosting up to level 30. Let's have a look at it. It is double sausage. It's got helping speed, ingredient finder, and inventory M. That is pretty strong. And then I think if I just go by Pokédex here, the Charmander that I found the other day is probably one of these starred ones. Yeah, this was the one I found the other day. It has berry finding and speed of help up, but it's double ginger, as you can see. Had this been double sausage, I would have considered it. Okay, let's have a look at some of these other... This one's also berry finding, but it's got ginger in that second slot. Adamant nature. And this one is also... Man, so many gingers in that second slot. This one's triple ginger, but overall... No, triple sausage. Excuse me, but it's got skill triggers. Charizard has a really bad skill trigger rate. I don't have the widget open, so what I can consider here is to bring this Charmeleon to level 30, and maybe I don't even have to evolve it. That could be an interesting quirk. So let's see how many levels I can gain on this bad boy. Pretty close. So if I do some supplemental handy, then this should be within reach. So I'll personally have to consider that for the second week, because the Inferno Corn Kima is a pretty strong dish. So let's hop back into RaenonX and we can explore some other option. So yeah, this is the way you go in sorting the dishes. And the reason why I've talked a lot about curries and not salads and desserts is if you highlight the herbs and the ginger and then go into salads, you see that you all of a sudden have a lot of problems covering for the other ingredients, and especially when it comes to desserts. So you have a couple dishes here with the ginger during dessert week, so you definitely want to use the ZZZ ticket to get rid of the dessert week. Salads too is pretty detrimental. If you do have some supplemental tomatoes, then you could consider the overheat ginger salad. But overall, it's not a particularly strong dish. It has an ingredient count of 35, and none of these ingredients are really strong. The fire herb is decent, but the tomatoes and the rest is not too good. 25% here is not the best. And so if you then go back to the curries, we can see that the spicy leek curry has also got a low ingredient count. It's got a low bonus, but overall leeks are a pretty strong ingredient, and I can farm that ahead of time, which is huge. And I'm thinking for the most part the ingredient or the dish bonus here is the most influenced by how often you cook it. The dish bonus will also just apply to the base ingredients and not the bonus ingredients, so that is something to keep in mind. So if you cook this huge Inferno Corn Kima instead, then that 48 base bonus will go to all of these ingredients, 77 of them, so that's pretty huge. So obviously, if you somehow can manage to have enough herbs, sausage, corn, and ginger to cover for it, that's going to be pretty good. If the Charizard had been in the other order where I get more sausage, then the ginger, that could be pretty big. And I think to an extent, if I'd had a good corn farmer, I would have probably worked on saving up corn this week because I can cover for the herbs, and I probably will get a lot of sausage next week. I do have that Charmeleon I can consider, and then the ginger is also very easy for me to get. I just don't have a good stuffle, and I don't expect to get my Beware anytime soon. And so the only way I can go for this one will be if I can somehow get a Ninetales, either this or next week, and bring it to level 30. Another thing I wanted to point out with this calculator, which is pretty nice, is you can click on the recipe itself, and then you get even more information. So obviously here's the list of the ingredients you need to cook it. And one of the things that I think is pretty cool is the slider for the recipe level. So unfortunately my camera here is blocking everything. So let's just put me over here. And so you can see at level 1, that's where this 48% is applied to the base ingredients and not the supplemental ingredients. All the supplemental ingredients will be affected by area bonus, so that is something to keep in mind. And then these are also affected by area bonus, of course. And so as you bring up this recipe level, you can see that the total bonus here is massive. And it applies to all of these ingredients, which is huge. There's a lot of ingredients here. So this dish will be very, very powerful. And yeah, so if we also pop back now and wait, hang on. And we have a look at we sort by ginger and herbs, and we see the spicy leek curry. I don't think I'll be able to bring it all the way up to level 55, but you can see that the bonus here is 240% on a decent chunk of ingredients. The leek ingredient is quite valuable. I thought potentially it would show the value here. I don't remember that by memory. It's like 160 or something, 170. And so, yeah, that's my overall strategy for sorting by dishes. And the other thing to keep in mind then is the second week, which we can have a look at by opening up the game again. And for this, we will pop into the news and look at some of those bonuses during the Entei Research. One of the big things to keep in mind is going to be the skill triggers for fire types. Let's just have a look at the Entei Research here, and we can see bonuses. Okay, so we can see that during week 1 of the event, the main skill levels of fire type helper Pokemon will be boosted by 1. So my Charizard, for example, will have level 4 on that ingredient magnet. It has a very low ingredient or skill rate rather, so it's not going to do a lot of supplemental ingredients. But during the second week, the Charizard is actually going to do a bit, because 20 ingredients is a bit every now and then, and maybe I can get some tails and save those up for Suicune. That could be nice. But the big thing here is that skill trigger rate, which we can see here, and that applies to both weeks, and it is multiplied by 1.5. So for example, if you do have the Flareon, then that's going to be pretty huge. And if you do manage to score a decent Ninetales, especially during that second week, that's going to be quite helpful, because it's going to be level 2 by the time you evolve it, and then plus 3 is going to raise it up to main skill level 5. And at that point, I think it's like 35 or 36 energy that you recover each time. And that 1.5 multiplier on the skill trigger rate is going to mean that you can potentially do a tag team with your main healer. So you run, for example, the Sylveon or the Gardevoir, and when your team is decently healthy, you can switch the Sylveon out for the Ninetales, and then you get a lot of berry value, and you get a little bit of healing, and it's just going to be a good strategy. So that's something to keep in mind. And the last thing I wanted to add here is, yeah, well, it is the extra ingredients, but I was thinking about the Arcanine. You will have a decent extra helpful with the Arcanine, with the skill trigger rate being 1.5, Arcanine being a skill specialist, and you also have the main skill levels boosted by 3. So for example, my Growlithe, which has skill level up S in that first slot, when I evolve it, it's going to be at level 3. And this second week bonus is going to bring it all the way to 6. So that's going to be pretty huge. And so I think overall, this is what I had for the Entei preparation video. If you guys have any nuggets, please put them in the comments. And then this way we can all read through the comments and just learn even more about what we can potentially do to prepare for the Entei. Oh, obviously, we have overstacking. I completely forgot. I even have a team set up to prepare for the, going over this. So if you have a really strong Raikou, this could be a good strategy because you can bring in a lot of berries, even if they're not favored. And I also showed in a video a couple weeks back that you can overstack ingredients. That could be pretty huge. So even if you have a strong Raikou and decide on overstacking fire types, that could be pretty helpful. If you have a very strong Arcanine, for sure, if you camp out at Taupe Hollow this week, the Arcanine is going to be huge. So I think, for example, if you have a strong Arcanine and Typhlosion, then probably running the Raikou and a healer, maybe that could be a good idea. And then you get a lot of Typhlosion berries just popping on the Monday, and that could be pretty strong. The only thing then to keep in mind is you would have to run the cooking power-up Pokemon before you start the overstacking. And by overstacking, you simply just pop the Raikou, and then the Raikou skill will add berries and ingredients on top of the full inventory on the Pokemon, and then you can bring that into the new week. So I will be stopping the cooking past the weekly mission, probably on Thursday, and we'll be working on